Most creatures avoid injury at any cost. But in Central Africa's shadowed streams, one frog survives not by fleeing, but by destroying and weaponizing its own bones. The Wolverine Frog snaps its own toe bones, forcing them through the skin to form claws sharp enough to wound would-be predators, only to heal and repeat the process. Why would evolution favor an animal that breaks itself to fight? The answer unravels more than just a myth of the ordinary amphibian. In the dense forests of Central Africa, a frog settles quietly among wet leaves and tangled roots. Its body is compact, no longer than 11 centimeters from nose to tail. The skin is mottled in shades of brown and olive, blending perfectly with the mud and shadows. There are no warning stripes, no flashes of red or yellow to signal poison. Even in the filtered light beneath the canopy, it disappears into the background, as if the forest floor itself has grown eyes and limbs. This is not a creature that courts attention. It moves little, sometimes not at all, relying on stillness and camouflage to avoid detection. Along the banks of fast-flowing streams, these frogs settle into the damp, their bodies pressed low, toes splayed for balance on slick rock and leaf. The air is thick with the sound of water and insects. Here, the frog's muted colors and patient posture serve as its main defense. Predators, including birds, snakes, and small mammals, scan the ground for movement. The frog remains motionless, almost indistinguishable from the debris around it. During the breeding season, the males grow fine filaments along their flanks and thighs. These are not true hairs, but outgrowths of skin rich in blood vessels, likely helping to draw oxygen from the water as the males guard their eggs. Even this adaptation is subtle, visible only on close inspection. To the casual observer, or to a passing predator, nothing about this frog suggests danger. It does not hiss or startle. It does not puff up or flash color. It simply waits, trusting that its cryptic appearance and the hush of its movements will keep it safe. In the world of amphibians, such strategies are common. Most frogs rely on camouflage, on the ability to vanish into the landscape, rather than on speed or aggression. The hairy frog fits this pattern perfectly, at least on the surface. It is a creature designed for obscurity, its life defined by the art of not being noticed. But beneath this unremarkable exterior, something far stranger is hidden, waiting for the rare moment when invisibility is not enough. Inside the foot of this frog, the ordinary gives way to something almost surgical. Instead of the slender, flexible bones found in most amphibians, each toe ends in a thickened, sharply hooked bone, what anatomists call the distal phalanx. This bone is not shaped for jumping or climbing. It is curved, pointed, and oriented so its tip rests just beneath the pad of skin at the toe's end. The arrangement is precise. The sharpened phalanx sits anchored to a small, bony nodule, both structures wrapped in a dense sheath of collagen fibers. In cross-section, micro-computed tomography scans reveal a striking contrast to the anatomy of other frogs. The terminal phalanges are robust, with a density and curvature that seem out of place in such a small animal. Even the angle at which the bone lies is unusual, slanted forward as if waiting for an instruction to move. This is not an injury, nor the result of a single trauma. In specimen after specimen, the same structures appear. The collagen sheath is thick and resilient, binding the claw-like bone to the nodule in a way that resists casual movement but does not prevent forceful separation. The nodule itself is distinct from the main bone, a sort of anatomical fuse that can break or dislodge under the right conditions. When these elements are viewed together, the intent behind the design becomes clear. The system is built not to prevent breaking, but to channel it, to make sure that when a fracture occurs, it happens in a controlled and useful way. Comparative scans of related species show how rare this setup is. Most frogs have terminal toe bones that taper gently and remain well within the soft tissue. In the hairy frog, the phalanx is much thicker, with a pronounced hook at the tip. This hook is always positioned just a fraction of a millimeter below the skin's surface. The only thing keeping it from emerging is the integrity of the collagen sheath and the connection to the nodule. Even in preserved specimens, the readiness of the system is obvious. There are no external claws, no keratin sheaths, nothing visible to the naked eye. Yet under the microscope, the bones look almost weaponized, poised for a transformation that is anything but accidental. Anatomists have mapped out the exact path the bone would take if forced forward. The tip would travel through the soft tissue and pierce the skin at the ventral surface of the toe, emerging as a temporary spike. The rest of the time, the bone remains hidden, its potential masked by the ordinary appearance of the frog's foot. The presence of this internal architecture, thickened hooked phalanges, anchored nodules, and collagen sheaths, raises a new question. What sequence of events could possibly activate such a system? And what kind of force is required to turn anatomy into armament? For now, the answer lies in the mechanics of the trigger, a process that begins only when the frog's other defenses have failed. A predator's grip changes everything. When a hairy frog is seized by a set of jaws, a human hand, or the unyielding pressure of a net, its entire physiology pivots from passive to active defense. This is not a reflexive spasm or the blind thrashing of panic. The frog's response is targeted and specific, requiring a level of muscular control that speaks to evolutionary purpose. Field herpetologists working along Central African streams have described the moment with clinical precision. The frog's body stiffens, its hind limbs flex, and the toes curl inward with surprising force. The action is concentrated in the foot, where a set of intrinsic flexor muscles contract, pulling the tip of each digit toward the sole. These muscles are not unique in frogs, but in this species, their strength is harnessed for a singular outcome. The mechanism only comes into play when the frog is truly trapped. Researchers have noted that gentle handling or even the threat of a nearby predator is not enough. The claws remain hidden unless the animal is physically restrained. Hunters in Cameroon and Gabon have adapted their techniques accordingly, using spears or machetes rather than risking a bare-handed capture. Their caution is justified. When the frog senses that escape is impossible, the flexor muscles fire in a coordinated sequence, generating enough tension to overcome the resistance of the collagen sheath and the small bony nodule anchoring each terminal phalanx. This is not a random breakage. The force is directed along the axis of the toe, ensuring that the sharpened bone slides forward, precisely along the path evolution has prepared. Anatomists studying preserved specimens have found consistent evidence of this pattern. The fractured nodules and displaced phalanges are always aligned, suggesting that the process is not only repeatable but also highly controlled. No other amphibian in the region shows this combination of muscular activation and skeletal adaptation. The hairy frog's defense is a last resort, triggered only when all other strategies have failed. The choice is stark: risk catastrophic injury or face certain predation. In the hands of a scientist, the claws can be activated by a firm, sustained grip, never by accident, never by mild restraint. The system is engineered for moments of real danger, when hesitation is not an option. The frog's anatomy, behavior, and the accounts of those who have handled it all point to the same conclusion. The weapon is hidden until the very instant it is needed, and its deployment is a deliberate act of survival. The moment the flexor muscles contract, the frog's anatomy delivers its answer with precision. The sharpened tip of the terminal phalanx, anchored until now by a sheath of collagen and a bony nodule, is driven forward. The force is not wild or chaotic. Instead, it follows a path mapped out by the arrangement of bone, tendon, and connective tissue. As the tension peaks, the collagen fibers rupture and the bone's tip presses against the thin skin on the underside of the toe. The skin gives way, not in a tearing gash, but through a focused puncture, just wide enough for the bone to pass. What emerges is not a splinter or a jagged break. The phalanx slides outward, its hooked tip exposed to the world as a temporary spike. This is not a keratin claw or a hardened scale. It is naked bone, curved and pointed, still tethered at its base, but now protruding beyond the toe pad. The wound remains tightly localized. Blood loss is minimal, confined to the immediate area around the puncture. The frog does not bleed out. Instead, the injury is contained by the body's architecture, a controlled breach designed to maximize the weapon's effect while minimizing collateral damage. Micro-CT scans of preserved specimens reveal how little tissue separates the phalanx from the outside world. In some toes, the bone sits less than a millimeter beneath the skin, its orientation perfectly aligned for projection. Once deployed, the spike can rake against whatever is holding the frog: a predator's lip, a human finger, or the inside of a bird's beak. The shape of the bone, with its curved, sharpened end, ensures that the wound it creates is both deep and difficult to ignore. Yet the rest of the toe remains intact, its structure preserved by the specificity of the break. This is a system built for repeatability. The fracture does not shatter the bone. It severs a single connection, allowing the spike to emerge and then eventually to be withdrawn. The skin, though pierced, is not flayed or stripped away. The result is a set of natural daggers, temporary, precise, and surprisingly survivable. The frog's foot, so ordinary in appearance only moments before, has become a set of weapons, each one the product of calculated injury. For the attacker, the effect is immediate. What felt like soft, yielding flesh is now armed with bone. When the bone spikes emerge from the frog's toes, the effect is immediate and unmistakable. For anything gripping the frog, a predator's mouth or a human hand, the sensation shifts in an instant from yielding flesh to sharp, curved bone raking against skin. The claws are not long, but they are pointed and hard enough to break the surface. In the hands of field researchers, these claws have left deep bleeding scratches, sometimes cutting down to the bone. Hunters in Cameroon and Gabon learned long ago to avoid direct contact and to switch to spears or machetes after painful encounters. The risk is not just discomfort, it is the sudden, unexpected pain of an animal that seems, until that moment, entirely harmless. In the wild, the frog's defense is not about inflicting mortal wounds. It is about creating a split second of confusion and pain. The surprise of bone where there should be only soft tissue is enough to interrupt the attack. The frog does not thrash or bite. It transforms its foot into a tool designed to make an attacker hesitate. Even a momentary release, a jaw loosening, a grip relaxing, can be the difference between life and death. The frog is small, but the shock of the claws is outsized. The animal does not need to overpower its attacker. It only needs to become, for a heartbeat, too difficult to hold. No scientific study has captured a wild predator dropping a hairy frog in response to the claws. There are no controlled trials, no camera-trapped footage of a snake or bird recoiling in surprise. Instead, the evidence comes from inference, from handler injuries, from the anatomical precision of the mechanism, and from the evolutionary logic that such a costly defense would not persist if it failed to work. The claws are not a bluff. They are a calculated risk, deployed only when all other options have failed. In the absence of direct observation, scientists model what likely happens: a sudden injury, a startled release, and a battered but living frog slipping away into the water or leaf litter. The payoff is survival, bought at the price of self-inflicted damage. The next challenge is not escape, but healing, a process that begins the moment the frog is free. A regenerative biologist examines the aftermath of the frog's defense with careful precision. Under the microscope, the broken tip of the phalanx is surrounded by a thickened ring of new bone, a callus that shows the injury is not a death sentence. The skin, once pierced, closes over the wound, leaving only faint traces of trauma. In preserved specimens, healed toes show layers of remodeled tissue, their structure subtly altered but functionally intact. The process relies on ordinary vertebrate repair. Osteoblasts lay down new bone to bridge the fracture, while the epidermis migrates to seal the opening. Unlike mammals, where repeated bone breaks can mean permanent loss, amphibians, like the Wolverine Frog, possess a remarkable capacity for localized regeneration. No one has tracked the exact hours or days, but the pattern is clear. Claws that once protruded are drawn back beneath the skin as the tissues heal. The same digit can cycle through injury and repair more than once, the callus marking each episode. The system is not reckless. It is sustainable, relying on the body's ability to mend what it must break. For this frog, survival is built on a partnership between violence and repair, a balance that allows the weapon to be used again when needed. Among vertebrates, the idea of using self-inflicted injury as a defense is almost unheard of. Most animals avoid harm at all costs, relying on speed, toxins, or armor. The hairy frog stands nearly alone, breaking its own bones and tearing its own skin to survive. Even among amphibians, this strategy is an outlier. Lizards may shed their tails, sea cucumbers expel organs, but these are disposable parts engineered to be lost with minimal damage. In the frog, the injury is deep and structural, yet the animal recovers and repeats the cycle. Despite clear anatomy, much remains unknown. Scientists have never captured high-speed footage of a live hairy frog deploying its claws. There are no electromyography data, no direct measurements of muscle force, and no time-lapse imaging of healing in real time. The mechanism is reconstructed from preserved specimens, reports of handler injury, and the logic of survival. But the full sequence, muscle contraction, bone rupture, skin penetration, and retraction, has not been observed in a living animal from start to finish. This leaves open questions. How quickly does bone heal after each deployment? Are there limits to how many times a toe can be weaponized and repaired? Could similar mechanisms exist, hidden in other species? For now, the hairy frog's defense stands as a rare solution, one that biology has revealed in outline, but whose details remain just beyond reach. The next answers will require new tools, careful observation, and a willingness to look even closer at the cost of survival. Right now, scientists still don't fully understand how this frog heals so cleanly, or if other creatures have evolved defenses as extreme. As habitat loss and climate change accelerate, unique adaptations like these could vanish before we ever decode them. The Wolverine frog stands as a living question. How much biological ingenuity remains undiscovered, hidden in the shadows, waiting until survival demands the unimaginable? Share your thoughts below.